Hey guys, Courtney Adams with Gather with Purpose here. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you are ready to dig in, fill up, and get going. All right, so let's jump right in here for today. Today, we are going to dig into a phrase that I kind of made up for my own sake, and it's the idea of swimming upstream in a waterfall culture. So let's talk about that for a little bit. First, I want to read this quote to you that I found, and I just thought that it was so perfect. It's by Dr. Charles Colson, and he says, when it comes to culture, there's no such thing as peaceful coexistence. If we are not defending truth, fighting for Christian values in all of life, the truth will be sacrificed on the altar of mainstream secularism. I don't know about you guys, but I find that to be so incredibly accurate that it makes me really sad to think about for our future generations. So before we get going, I'm going to remind you where you guys can find me and Gather with Purpose. So of course, you can find the podcast here on YouTube. I also have a Rumble channel under the same name, Gather with Purpose Podcast. And I post them on Rumble the same time that they get posted on YouTube. So every Thursday and Sunday, you can check them out on either platform, whichever you prefer. Both are free and easy to jump into. I am also a national leader with Mary and Martha Direct Sales Company. We are underneath Dayspring Company. And you can find me on my site at www.mymaryandmartha.com/CADAMS. Lastly, I have a blog that I send out once a week, normally on Sundays, and it's normally very simple and straightforward. Nobody has time to search for meal ingredients with a giant backstory and 1,000 pictures. Not my style. So you can subscribe to my blog on CourtneyInAdams.com, and you can get all of the links from the week with the podcast and who knows what else. I throw in stuff about homeschooling in there, everyday life, and just things like that. So nothing major, and I'm not going to spam you. All right. So in a world driven by culture, let's gather with purpose and focus on that which matters most. Join me each week for what's new, a different perspective, encouraging outreach, and what is real. This is not your everyday podcast. I will promise you this. I will show up to challenge you, encourage you, help you grow, and break free of culture. So for today, let's gather with purpose and think and talk about the idea of swimming upstream in a waterfall culture. So what do I mean by a waterfall culture? I mean that so much is being thrown at us, to us, theoretically for us, and about us that it is hard to keep up with. And let me give you an example. About a year ago, the standard news cycle was about 24 to 48 hours. That was pretty standard for most publications. Just a few years before that, the standard news cycle was anywhere from 3 to 5 days. And what I mean by standard news cycle is turnover of stories, new stories being brought in, old ones kind of being forgotten about, so on and so forth. Now, the standard news cycle is less than 6 hours. Holy cow, that is inundation at a whole new level. And guys, this is just thinking about the news cycle. So if that's just one area that has a turnover of less than 6 hours, think about all of the other areas that are present in our lives that have turnovers that fast, if not quicker. I can guarantee you that our children feel a standard turnover rate of less than a school day. So they can go to school one day, they can hear bits and pieces about something. The next day they can go back to try and put it together. And that idea, concept, story, drama, whatever it is already gone. And the majority of the people probably don't even know what they're talking about because it's already been the has-been of the previous day. That is a waterfall culture. If we think about waterfalls, they are booming over the side of a mountain at such enormous force and speed that death is imminent if you go over that mountain, right? So that's a pretty extreme example, but it gives you an idea of what I mean about the waterfall culture. Things are flying over the mountain so fast that we don't have the opportunity to even try to want to catch up. So, swimming upstream in a waterfall culture is very hard. That water coming over the edge of that mountain comes down the river, rushing at such a rate that swimming upstream against it is almost near impossible. And it feels very exhausting. And it is very exhausting. And quite honestly, it's defeating, right? It's a really lonely place to be. There's lots of confusion, tons of uncertainty, and a ridiculous amount of unknowns. And when that is the everyday culture that we are faced with, we almost feel like we would just rather not be a part of it. Anybody ever feel that way? I have lots of days where I just think, you know what? It would just be so much easier to hole up in my house, never come out, live off of the land that we have created for ourselves. And I will talk about that in a future episode. And just kind of peace out because I cannot keep up. I don't want to keep up. And I'm exhausted just thinking about those that try. And we homeschool. I don't send my children to school. They're not inundated with mainstream culture. We definitely, and are very proud of this, protect our children from as much as we possibly can when it comes to culture. And that's an entirely other episode for another day. But we aren't even in it. And I still feel it for so many that are. So today, we're going to talk about the who, what, where, when, and why of swimming upstream in a waterfall culture, a mainstream culture, if you will. So to begin with, though, I do want to share just a little bit about my background for those of you that don't know and how I have probably always been swimming upstream. I've never been the one to fit into the crowd, and I've never been one to give a rat's behind about fitting into the crowd. Never once have I wanted to be a part of whatever was considered cool. The irony in that all is that people tell me I'm cool all the time, which makes me laugh because please don't consider me that. Anybody else feel that way? Like, no, please do not consider me that. I've never wanted to be, and I'm not about to start now. So I have always been swimming upstream. I've been doing the things that everybody said couldn't be done. I've been fighting for the things that nobody really seemed to care about, and it's exhausting on this side, but here I am continuing to fight on lots of different things that are passionate items for me, and I feel like I stand alone in a lot of them. And I've been speaking out on things that other people just don't seem to see. And I know I'm not alone in all of this because the cool thing about swimming upstream is that even though you feel like you're alone in the moment, at some point you come across that school of fish. You come across your people. So I have been here for the majority of my life, really swimming upstream, being inundated with the things of culture that culture tells me I should be a part of and I should focus on, and I should just put my head down and do this because culture says. And I'm the one that says, well, no, simply because you tell me I should do this, I'm going to do the exact opposite. That's me. It's always been who I am. So that's just a little bit about where I'm coming from in all of this. At some point, you kind of get to the place where you go, gosh, Am I really here all by myself? Or is this even worth it? And it is. It totally is. And as I have gotten older, I have seen just how important it is to break out from the crowd, swim upstream, and fight against culture that is inundating us, our children, our homes, our everyday, our music, our clothing, our movies, every single piece of it. It is 100% worth swimming upstream against. So I've already explained to you what it means. So let's talk about what are we fighting for. When we are swimming upstream and we are fighting against that waterfall culture that's coming at us quicker than we can even notice, all we do is hear what's coming. We are fighting for the sanctity of our marriages. We are fighting for the family unit and how important that is. You guys, families are the most important thing our culture can have these days. And the idea of the nuclear family is slowly dying and it's being chiseled away at. And we are fighting for that. And that essentially is fighting for our children. Let me tell you, I come from a divorced family. My parents divorced when I was 5. I don't remember a whole lot about it when I was that little, but as I grew older, I obviously got to experience what it was like when two parents couldn't get along, even when it came to the kids. And the idea of the nuclear family and the children within that family was non-existent in what I grew up in. And it's a miracle of God that I have been married to my husband for 13 plus years. We have 3 children and we fight every day for the stability for our children to have what I did not have. And that's not because of me. That is 100% because of God. I would fail at trying to do this every single day because I am human. So when we are fighting back against culture, you guys, when we are swimming upstream, we are fighting for our kids. We are fighting for our families. We are fighting for our marriages. All of these things are worth fighting for. We are also fighting for that which has value and morality and which adds value. Having value and adding value are very different things. It is fighting for the things that made this country great when they first started. So when we think about history and our forefathers and the Constitution and the American Revolution and the Patriots and all that was sacrificed then and all that was done to carve out our country, when we are fighting against what is inundating our everyday life, we are fighting for what started the ability for us to even have a life in this country. And I could go on all day long and talk about history and all of that. I love history, and the American Revolution is a huge sticking point for me, and it's a topic I love to talk about. And, you know, maybe one day I will do a show on it if that's something you guys are interested in. But for now, we are fighting for what matters most in the here and now. And the health, you know, we scream about mental health. And after 2020, mental health is literally going to be the moneymaker of the pharmaceutical industry for the next 20 years because they're going to make an incredible buck off of what happened in 2020 with our children, our teenagers, single moms, marriages struggling, marriages that weren't struggling but are now. The family unit, mental health is a huge thing. It was a giant thing before 2020, and now it is a monster of an issue. These things are all things that we claim to care about. Fighting for these things and the sanctity of what started our country and what got us to where we are today matter. That's what we're fighting for. So, who is involved? Who stands up? Who gets at the forefront? You. I hate to tell you, but it's you. Just like in the last episode, we talked about being the change you wish to see in the world. Be is a verb. Verbs require action. If you want to see change surrounding what inundates our children, what gets brought into the family, what becomes center for marriages, you have to get involved. You have to show up. You have to be there front and center saying, no more, enough is enough, I'm done. The innuendos, the overtones, the undertones, the explicitness of music and movies and clothing and whatever else you want to add to it is done. I'm not buying it. I'm not supporting it. We're not having it. Guys, we get to get involved. We get to decide. Guess what? You make a paycheck. You get to express what you support and don't support with where you spend your money. That money is hard earned. Don't give it to the people that don't give a rat's you know what about you at all. Spend it on the people that care about that which matters most. Marriages, family units, children, mental health. Show up and support those that support you. You wouldn't stick around in a friendship that didn't give you anything back, that was just take, right? So why are we showing up and supporting that which is take, and not only they're just taking, but then they're throwing it back in our faces with what they give us, with what they sell, with what they share, with what they pour into our children and families and marriages. We get involved. We show up. We are the change. We put action to our words, our desires, our thoughts, our irritations, our frustrations. We are the ones who get involved. Where does this happen? Everywhere. It happens at our schools. It happens where we spend our money. Like I said, guys, the past year, we have stopped supporting companies that do not support our country, our families, our marriages, our children, the mental health of anybody and everybody in this country, that are not there to support anybody and everybody, and that do not practice what they preach. We have shown up in that manner with our money, and let me tell you, we don't miss one thing that we have cut out, because in figuring out where we can spend our money and where we should and should not, we have found better alternatives. We get to decide. We are the ones that show up. It happens in our everyday life. It happens with our voices and our actions, and starting groups that support one another and going into establishments and schools and government systems and saying, enough is enough. I'm done. I'm going to give you an example. In Vail, Arizona last week, a group of parents showed up. They showed up at a meeting for the school district, and there were so many parents that were all supporting each other and were saying enough is enough for our children with regards to X, Y, and Z topic. We are done. We are not having it. These are our children. We outnumber you. Things have to change. The entire elected school board walked out and quit. This group of parents elected a new school board, and they instituted what they wanted as a group. You guys, that is how you swim upstream in a waterfall culture. You show up. You're the change. You put action behind what you want. You are the difference, and it happens in the areas that you want change. When do we do it? Every single day. Every single day. Find people that support you, and you will never feel lonely a day in the battle of standing up for children, mental health, the family unit, marriages, and every single person in this country that supports America. We do it every day, and we put action behind our words, and we show up. Why do we fight this? Because like I've said, it is so worth it for our children, our families, our marriages, the mental health. I don't know how many times I have to say this. Those 4 areas will never return void. If we pour in to those 4 areas of our lives, they will never return void. Our marriages and our family units will influence other marriages and other family units, just like you will be influenced from other marriages and other family units. It will then trickle down to our children, and their mental health will increase because a strong family unit and a strong marriage does nothing more than to help our children and their mental health. And they move forward, and they do such when they get to being married and having children. It is this beautiful picture of a trickle-down effect. That's why we fight. You guys, we can get up every morning and we can send them off to be handled by an institution that wants nothing more than to see them conform. And at the end of the day, if you really think about what they're being educated on, it's more or less herding cats all day. It's why they're there for 9 hours. The teachers are having to deal with just herding children all day. True, delightful, beautiful education isn't exactly happening. And they're all getting told the exact same thing. It's like a bunch of automatons. And I've already talked about this in a previous episode. So if at this point you're here and you're getting angry with me, that's fine. Join the club. We have to fight if we want to see a difference. And let me tell you guys, I get it. I homeschool. You might think I'm completely disconnected from the idea of public school and that I have no say. And while my children don't attend public school, I did. And I thought I got a good education. 18 years later, as I'm schooling my children, I'm learning that what I learned is diddly in comparison to the grand scheme of things. Why aren't our children being taught how to change a tire, balance a checkbook, do all of these everyday life things, basic economics, how to save money, so on and so forth? The ins and outs of mortgages and buying a car and loans and interest rates and credit cards. Why aren't our children being taught about that? Those are things they need for the long haul. Those are things that will influence marriages, family units, raising children, mental health. I mean, we can look at statistics, and the biggest stressor for a marriage is finances. Not one person in that marriage ever learned about finances in school. Imagine that. If we could erase the stressors, the number one stressor of marriages, through teaching about finances in our education program, do you think that there would be more marriages that survive? I feel confident that that would be the case. If we can erase these main stressors, which stressors are mental health, if we can erase these main stressors through teaching about them and growing confidence in our children during their education process, don't you think we would have stronger children, family units, and marriages? Which would then inevitably lead to a stronger country, better economics, more wisdom, higher education, and less turnover, less mental health issues, so on and so forth. Yes, I feel confident. So why do we fight upstream? Why do we swim upstream against the waterfall culture? For these exact reasons. How do we win and how do we get heard? It's not always about winning. So let me just put that out there right now. It's not always about winning. But when we are heard with our children and our families and our marriages and our mental health, that's a win. Your idea of a win is going to be different than your neighbors, your friends, your moms, your whatever. We each have our own passions that we bring to these fights. We each have our own reasons for jumping in the river and swimming upstream against the waterfall rushing river. And when we have accomplished what we have set out to do, and when we work together with a support system that is behind us and that is on board with us, then we win. When we do, and we are the action behind the idea of being the change we wish to see in the world, like I've talked about in my previous episode, we are heard. We are seen. We are felt. Change happens. Things aren't going to happen overnight. Things aren't going to change overnight. Marriages didn't devolve overnight. The divorce rate didn't climb to an all-time high overnight. The idea of the family unit wasn't belittled overnight. Children's mental health didn't decline to an all-time low overnight. But at some point, somebody's got to jump in the river, swim upstream, fight against the current, and say, enough is enough. Even if I don't see it in my day, I will do this for the future. It's got to happen. So what is the point of all of this? To encourage you to figure out what it is that you want to swim upstream against. Find a group of people that support you and encourage you and will join you, and get to work. If we all join in on something that really just gets us going, you guys, we will be the change we wish to see in the world. If I do nothing else in this episode except for encourage you to confidently go out and speak just for the first time on something that has always crawled under your skin, gotten you just the right button has been turned on it, and you have kept quiet about it because you're not real sure what other people are going to think, can I just tell you to go ahead and start talking? Because I guarantee you, you're not the only person that has that idea. Just like when we were in college and our professors would say, if you have a question, ask the question. I can guarantee you're not the only person with that question. You're not the only person that would like to see change in a particular area. And nobody will know that you are out there if you stay silent. You also have no place to complain about it. You can't. If you're never going to speak out and be the change and put the action behind the idea of it, you never, ever have the right or validity to speak up about it or to complain about it. You then just get to tuck your tail between your legs, walk off, and deal with it. Because you made that choice, nobody else. It's on you. So it's high time we all got off of our couches, stopped binge watching and falling prey to the automaton of our society, and actually did something about it. Because peaceful protests did not just come up in the past 10 years. There's a reason that it has been such a thing since the American Revolution. It gets stuff done. It really does. And there's nothing wrong with it. I am all for a good peaceful protest. Please, by all means, round up some people, go and fight for what you believe in. But you have to start somewhere. And to be heard, and to be seen, and to be felt, and for change to actually happen, even if it's slow moving and you're exhausted and you feel alone, you have to start somewhere. So where are you going to start? What is the idea, the area, the topic, the passion that really just does it for you? I would love for you to share with me what that is. Would love to encourage you on that. And you never know, we might have the same things that really just get us motivated and out there putting the action behind the idea of being the change we wish to see. Thanks for joining us today. I hope you dug in, filled yourself up, and are ready to get going. Nothing gets done sitting around waiting for others to do it. So let's be the ones that do it. Get it done and do so boldly and authentically. The world needs more of that. Swim upstream in a waterfall culture. Again, to find us, you can do so on YouTube or Rumble. Gather with Purpose Podcast is the name of both channels in both places. I share podcasts every Sunday and Thursday morning. You can also subscribe to my blog, CourtneyNAdams.com. I maybe send something out once a week. Tips, tricks, ideas, real life, podcast links, whatever else. And if you would like to check out Mary and Martha, where I am a national leader, you can do so on www.maryandmartha.com/CADAMS, CADAMS. Thanks so much for joining us today. I hope this one really challenged you and gives you something to think about. I would love to know what it was that challenged you and what you end up thinking about. And remember, swim upstream and a waterfall culture. It is worth it. Thanks again, guys. Have a great one.